This is a video clip from episode 10 of the Average Joe Lawn Care Show with Matt Martin. What do you like when you have a new homeowner that's reaching out to you, um, and they're wanting to take care of it themselves? Like, what do you tell them to start mastering first, and then like in regards to starting to apply fertilizers and all the ides and those types of things? Like, what do you like? How do you tell them to start into that to be um, successful, efficient, but also responsible?
Uh, I don't know. I I don't. I would say this. My content, and I would say there's not a lot of people that reach out to me that are like, "Hey, I just moved into a house. It's my first yard. How do I get started?" I probably haven't gotten one of those emails in 3 years.
Okay, well,
So
what would you tell
if
somebody?
if it was me, I would tell them. I'd say step number one: get a soil test. Go just bite the bullet. Even if you cannot interpret it, you don't know what the hell you're doing, go get some soil, put it in a bag, send it to a lab, and get a test done. Have you a Malik 3 done on it, and then let's look at it together, and then we can start to build a program, if you will, around what kind of information we're working with.
Sure.
Because without it, you're kind of just taking shots in the dark, and you could get lucky, and you could get lucky for a relatively long period of time. But again, as we start talking about best management practices and trying to change the tide of lawn care from a negative into a positive, if we know and can quantitatively deduce why we are applying each individual input at the rate we're applying, if we can make that justification, then the overall result is that typically we can apply a little bit less because it's not misguided, and it shows a pattern of responsibility that we have as applicators or DIY homeowners or whatever the case may be. Build the appropriate foundation upon which you can build your house. And that is a soil test.
Yeah, because so I that's one of the things that, like, when I have neighbors or family members or something like that ask me, they're like, "Well, what could I do? Or where should I start?" And I've mentioned soil tests because I'm like, well, that really gives you a good platform to stand on to tell you where you need to go and those types of things. But that's like foreign language to them because it's not, all you see on the commercials and stuff like that is, here's your step one, here's your step two, here's your step three, here's your step four. And that's really it. Like it's rarely, if ever, talked about. Like, you can't go to Home Depot, and I don't even know if they sell soil tests or any sort of soil tests there, to help somebody get it. And maybe that's because maybe because it's easier to start getting caught in the weeds and it's more confusing for people there. I don't know. Maybe that's why it is. It's probably you can't make as much money doing it that way by telling people to do it the right way. I don't know. I'm just speculating. It's just my. But you know what I mean? Like, that's when I hear people ask me, or when I have people ask me like where to start, that's usually where I recommend. They're like, "Oh, that sounds complicated. I don't want to do that. I just want to go get a bag of fertilizer and put it in the lawn."
So you're exactly right. It is. It sends people down rabbit holes, and at the end of the day, it takes a special kind of person to want to explore a rabbit hole. But again, it kind of goes back to my point of, by circumventing the soil test, you are already beginning to oversimplify what it means to care for something.
Right.
Because we're not just caring for turf, we're also acting in a very responsible way towards the environment, right?
Yep.
And so in order to be as environmentally responsible as possible, we have to have some sort of foundation upon which we build everything we do. So if you don't start with the soil test, yes, it's so much easier. I promise you, I could have had a way better career. I could have a way bigger YouTube channel. I could have a way bigger consulting base if I just told people the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go out with triple 13. That's all you got to do. You got to go out with triple 13. And we can spin it up 10 different ways from Sunday to get you a triple 13, but that's what you need to be doing is triple 13. It will work. There is no doubt about it. You can go put down triple 13 10 different ways from Sunday, and every single time it is going to work. But How long does it take before you're over applying phosphorus? How long does it take before you're over applying potassium? How long does it take before you're over applying nitrogen? But the recommendation was once a month, I'll go apply triple 13, 10 pounds per thousand. Yes, it works, but are you really providing any kind of lasting environmental impact there? You're
Right.
not. And that's when the tide starts to turn and shift the boat back towards the negative. So if I'm ever preparing anybody, just bite the bullet, get ready. It seems complex at first, but it's not. Just get a soil test and let's see where we actually should be starting.
Well, because I also think about like for my case at this new house, when I started fertilizing last year, before I started fertilizing, I had my soil test done, and I saw what the pH level was at. But I really had I knew that was high, but I didn't know like the ultimate effects of what high pH had on plants' ability to take up nutrients and those types of things. So somebody that didn't have any person, because I feel like what I do is probably more than what most homeowners are going to go do, they would have probably just kept pushing fertilizer, or they would have maybe gotten frustrated because the lawn wasn't greening up or doing something that they thought it should. So then they would have hired somebody. Then that person, whether or not that company actually does soil tests, because I don't believe I've seen so many companies come out and treat lawns and they don't do soil tests from what I can see, and they just kind of, it seems like they follow some sort of regiment that is like standard or whatever. And then that neighbor may not get the response from them, so they'll fire them. They'll pick up another company. I could see that happening in my scenario if somebody had the same type of situation that didn't have the same desire or interest to go maybe figure out why it's not doing what it should do.
Yeah, I mean it is, and I see it all over the place, and yes, you're exactly right. And something as simple as pH inhibiting a lawn from turning as green as it should be, and people are looking at their neighbors' houses and they're all turning green and theirs not, and they're applying more and more and more. They get caught. They're chasing the dragon, and nothing ever works. And so immediately, and this is, I don't know what it is, but if it's kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a man's mentality. Like for instance, if I'm trying to thread a screw into a nut, right? And at first it gives me a little resistance. The first thing I do is I start to bear down on it and try and force it through there. Just and how many do you have to strip your threads before you're like, okay, that bit a little bit more aggressively. Let me back that out and try it again. Make sure I had it seated correctly. It's like you kind of have to learn through brute force too. And I think the same thing kind of applies to lawn care. That we can tell these things like start with the soil test or what, but you get it in your head. You heard this old wives' tale. Well, the first thing I need to go out with lime because I'm in the Southeast, and therefore if I'm in the Southeast, I know I got that acid soil, so I better get down on some lime. And you put down lime, and then you eventually nothing is responding, and you go get a soil test and your pH is a 8.3, and you're like, why? What am I doing again?
So that that leads me to a question I've had, because I've had some of the neighbors around here, they have companies like, oh, they did lime, this, that, and the other. I'm like, why did they do lime? Did they do a soil test? And you're like, I don't think so. And they look at their thing and they ask the people, and they don't do a soil test. They just throw lime down. So I was wondering if in my scenario, if people were treating my lawn on that in the past, before we ever moved in, if they were treating it on the standard like recommendation of you always need to put lime down every year, could that have led the lawn to become that alkaline?
That becoming that high, probably not.
Okay.
I don't think years. I mean, you would have to be applying significant amounts every year, and I can say, being on the side of lawn care things, it takes a special customer that would sign off on the cost for me to come in and amend with the amount of lime it takes to make a real lasting impression. Because you show up the cost. If you pull up to a property, you will say your yard's 10,000 square feet, and I pull up and I need to apply, 2,000 pounds an acre to move the material, and so the time it would take to spread 10 bags on your property, or the time it would take or the cost to spread 10 bags on your property, just the material in and of itself, it starts to add up fast for the receiver of that service. And all of a sudden they get a bill for a few $100s. And they're like, you just spread lime. Lime is $5 a bag. Why did it cost $300? I'm like, well, I had to put a friggin' whole pallet on your yard to make a real lasting impression. So a lot of times, when a lot of lawn care guys are doing this, you may only apply enough lime to offset the amount of fertilizer you applied that year, right? So say, you knew you applied 3 pounds in, and you could probably, with enough, this much lime, we'll say, it's going to be 120 pounds of lime or whatever would offset the amount of free hydrogen produced by that 3 pounds in. So out. I'm going to apply 120 pounds of lime instead of 1,000 pounds of lime. So no, I don't think that was the case. I think you're just on limestone, and that's why.
So that's the other thing, because I know limestone is very prevalent in this area, or at least when you see like the highways being cutting through a hill, you can tell like that looks like limestone, but then supposedly companies make the recommendation of like, oh well, you need to put lime down because you're in this area like that. I don't know, that's what I think about that as well. That just doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know.
There is, and I would encourage everybody that if you want to hire a lawn care company, look for the boutique guys. And I hate that word. That is one of my least favorite words in the English language. But look for the specialized guys. It's going to cost a little bit more, and just understand that it's going to cost more, but you're paying for the knowledge that those people have, and you're paying for the peace of mind that, well, what they're going to be putting on your property is going to be environmentally responsible, and it is going to be conducive for the success of your property too.
What do you mean by boutique guys? Like what would their name look like, or company name look like?
Yeah, you're gonna have to go down the wormhole on that one. So I don't think you're gonna find a name or a kind of red flag signifier. But if it looks like a franchise, smells like a franchise, tastes like a franchise, tread carefully, I guess it would be the way I would look. Because then, when you're dealing with franchises, a lot of times that responsibility falls on the technical ability of the applicator themselves. And don't get me wrong, there are thousands of phenomenal applicators out there that work for these big companies, and they do awesome work, and they carry the company on their back as they trudge through. But occasionally too, you find a few bad apples. It's like, and you take your car in for an oil change, and one of the technicians tell you that you need whatever else done too. So there's bad apples in any industry.
Catch the Average Joe Lawn Care Show live on Friday nights at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on the Lawn Guardian YouTube channel. It's always fun interacting with the audience in the live chat during the show, so we hope to see you there. If you couldn't catch the live show, watch it recorded on the Lawn Guardian YouTube channel, or listen to the audio version of it by searching Average Joe Lawn Care Show on podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast.